We invite your sweet presence to abide with us. We thank you for the meetings that you have provided for us, and we ask and pray, Lord, as we come before thee, that you open our heart and our thoughts, that we may receive a blessing from you. We pray for the speaker, Lord, that he may enlighten us through your messages. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right, we're going to hand this over to Mr. Cross.
Good morning, y'all. I'm going to ask again, I asked last night, how many of y'all are originally from this neck of the woods? So it's interesting. I ask that question in most churches I go. And unfortunately, there's some churches, no hand raises. And that tells me there's no local evangelism. It's just people who moved in. And that's sad. And that doesn't matter whether I'm in North Carolina or Tennessee or all over the U.S. But what I don't see is what I heard this morning. I don't hear this kind of music in Chicago and New York City and Portland, Oregon, and I just got back from Minnesota. Wasn't that good music? Yes, that's our music. I enjoyed it. I always like coming back to Chattanooga area because that's where I'm from, and I feel like just feel like I'm back home, and that's good. Well, this morning we're going to talk about old mountain remedies, and great music to start off with this. I'm from the Plateau. I was born in Dunlap, and my great-granddaddy we talked a little bit about him last night, and he taught me about herbs. And it's amazing the effect of herbs and natural remedies. They're very, very powerful. We have to go very fast because I've gone as much as 6 hours on this presentation, so we don't want to do that this morning. Let's see here. Let's go back here. When we look at looking at natural remedies, many times folks are looking at just addressing, let's say you've got strep throat. We talked about that last night. You got strep throat, and so we're just going to attack strep throat. But what you want to do is you want to look more holistic. You want to look at taking care of the whole body. And we talked a little bit about last night the 8 laws of health. So those are a given. These 8 laws of health are a given to what we're going to talk about the rest of the morning. And those laws being, there we go, nutrition. What are they? Exercise, water, sunshine. Now, what's temperance? When I go in the school system, I tell the kids, it's just making the right decisions. Now, yes, it's easy for us to say, well, I use temperance. I don't smoke, do drugs, or do alcohol. And I thought that's what it was when I was a kid. And went to GCA and SMC and UTC, and I don't do drugs, I don't do alcohol, and I don't smoke, therefore I'm temperate. It's much more than that. It could be, might be what you're listening to. It might be what you're reading. It might be the conversations that you're listening to. And so temperance is just making good, right decisions. And the next one? Air. And it's not just breathing good, fresh air. It's also having good diaphragmatic breathing. You know, do you breathe like a chihuahua? Or do you breathe with good diaphragmatic breathing, you know, like a baby? I remember going to GCA, and Elder Crook would have us lay down when we come in and join Camerata. He'd have you lay down, and he'd stick a songbook. Anybody go to GCA? Okay, we got one. Anyone else? Okay. And he'd lay a book on there on your stomach, and he'd make you breathe to where your stomach, the book would go up and down for good diaphragmatic breathing. No matter if you're a wind instrument or a choir or whatever, it's not just fresh air, but are you having good breathing? Rest, and what's the next one? It's the most important. Trust in God, and that's where the power comes from. I'm going to go past these. These are some situations in the Bible that God used different remedies. Let's think real quick. What are some He used? The figs, and it was there. Yes, the figs. I remember I was in a Sabbath school class one morning, and a physician who was teaching a Sabbath school class, and it mentioned it in the Bible, in the Sabbath school class, and he said there's no medicinal benefits in those figs at all. It was just the issue of trust. Well, this guy by the name of Neil Nedley, as y'all know, he comes about 2 weeks later, and he was talking about, we found all that, and he went through all these nutritional values that we found and healing properties in the fig. And so, God puts these natural remedies in different things. David talks about purge with hyssop. Yeah. You had spit and clay. Yeah. We're going to talk about spit poultices tomorrow. He spit and clay. What else? Honey. Yes. Water. Hydrotherapy. Who do you think of? Bethesda, yes. What about Naaman? Yes. So there was remedies used in the Bible. So we're going to look at remedies by diagnosis. This is a foot. This guy's physician called me, endocrinologist called me, and she says, "Walt, can you help me keep from amputating this foot?" He's a diabetic. He's got osteomyelitis, and this is what it looked like. This is what it looks like in 2 weeks, and this is what it looks like in 4 weeks. And we're ready to put a graft on there. Amazing, isn't it? When I worked in regular health care, no, it was not a good situation here. So what did we do? He had what kind of neuropathy? Diabetic neuropathy. And one of the things we got to look at as we look at natural remedies is you got to get to the cause. Cure is in the cause. And so if I have me a piece of sandpaper and I'm rubbing my arm, and you come up and you say, "Oh, honey, let me put some medicine on there," and you put some medicine on there, and then I go to rubbing, and you put more medicine on it, and then I go to is it going to heal? No, it's not going to heal until I stop rubbing it with the sandpaper. He has diabetic neuropathy. We've got to address the diabetes. So we addressed the diabetes. We juiced him. And plus we needed to have good nutrition. And this is the fellow I talked about last night. So we gave him only juice, 16 ounces of vegetable juice for each meal. And then we did hydrotherapy. And many people say, "Well, you can't do hot and cold," as we talked about last night on that, but you can do warm and cool. Now, textbook is 103 in the hot side, but we actually blistered the top of his foot, and we found that wasn't a good thing. So we went to 100 degrees, and I've never had a problem since that. But that's the only time I ever even had a blistering problem at 103. But 100 degrees on the warm side and 70 degrees on the cool side. 3 minutes warm, 1 minute cool. 3 minutes warm, 1 minute cool, and that causes what? Vasodilation, vasoconstriction. Vasodilation, vasoconstriction. So you're increasing vascular flow. After the hydrotherapy, we used something called Allicin, Allimed. We did that both PO, teaspoon BID, twice a day. Allicin is a very, very strong garlic. It takes 24 cloves of garlic to make 1 drop of Allicin. We gave him a teaspoon twice a day. And then we sprayed the foot with the Allicin, again, because he had the osteomyelitis, which is infection of the bone. And then we put a salve on there, Golden Seal, the one I couldn't remember last night. Golden Seal, myrrh, frankincense, bee pollen. You can put bee propolis, bee propolis. You can put pine sap. We'll talk. Who's ever used pine sap? It's amazing, isn't it? It's tremendous. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. We put pine sap in there, and we put aloe vera. And you want to make it to the consistency that it's like paint. You want to paint it on there. You don't want to have to dig that off. He's got tender skin there. And so we just kind of painted it on all the red area. And then we put a charcoal poultice on there again because we have the osteomyelitis. And did that twice a day for 30 days. And there, we're starting to have some closure on that heel. We're starting to have some filling out through there. And then we have full closure and full filling out and ready for the graft. Isn't God good? And again, the 8 laws of health. And the last law of it is what? Trusting God. It is God that does the healing. It's not frankincense. It's not myrrh. It's God that does the healing. And this is what we did: cleaning the wound, hydrotherapy, the salves, golden seal, myrrh, aloe vera, frankincense, pine sap. Or if you don't have pine sap, you can use pine oil, or be propolis. Honey. Some wounds I've used honey on wounds before. Poultices. If you don't have a charcoal poultice, you can use a cabbage poultice. But the key here is you got to stop tobacco. I had a guy come in one time. The VA had worked with him for quite a while on a very small wound. I'm talking a wound the size of your end of your finger, very small, and it just wasn't healing, and they couldn't get it to heal up. And so he came over to see if I could help, and it wouldn't heal. And we did what we just talked about. I'm thinking, what is going on here? So I called a buddy of mine. He's a surgeon up in D.C. We used to work together. And I called him and I said, Doc, what am I missing here? He says, Walt, what are you doing? And I told him, he says, well, that's what we do. He said, that should do it. And he goes, that should be doing it. What else could there be? He goes, he doesn't smoke, does he? He goes, oh, that's it. He smokes. He goes, that ain't going to work if he smokes. I said, you're right. It won't smoke. So I went back out to the man, and I said, sir, I'm sorry, but I forgot, you smoke. You got to quit smoking. He goes, I ain't quitting smoking. And so I explained to him the issue of smoking causes a vasoconstriction, and you don't have adequate perfusion, and you aren't going to have good blood flow. There's nothing else I can do for you if you don't quit smoking. He goes, I ain't quitting smoking. I said, I can't help you anymore. And so I don't know what happened to him. He left. This week I had a lady call me from, where is she? She's in Kodak. And she has a wound, and she smokes. And I told her, I said, you got to quit smoking. And she says, but I'm not ready to quit smoking. I said, then your wound may not be ready to heal. You got to make choices. And so, but tobacco does cause a problem, and good nutrition. Nutrition is so important. If you have a patient with wound, if we were doing wound therapy on a patient, we always look at those labs. Is there good, good nutrients going on in the blood? Sure. I'm sorry. Now, are you providing DVDs or something for folks if they want? So what we're doing is we're videoing this. We're live streaming it. So it's going up on YouTube. So you can go back and you can watch these on YouTube. And if I'm going too fast, it's just so much to cover this morning. And then also there's DVDs if you want some DVDs there. And then tonight we'll have DVDs. And the one tonight will be much, much more information. Okay. Was that okay? Okay, you're welcome. Pine sap. We use pine sap for wounds, gum disease, mouth sores, immune system, cutting teeth. All 5 of my grandkids, we use pine sap for cutting teeth, for pain, headaches. But for wounds, it's excellent for wounds. Mary Lou tore her hand open one time working in the garden, and a buddy of mine, of ours, he's actually up in Crossville, Franklin Cobos. Who knows Franklin? Anybody know Franklin, Dr. Cobos? He's anesthesiology now, but back then he was ED, emergency room. And so we went over, and he looked at it, and he says, let's do some experimenting. And he's done some experimenting before on it, and he real carefully poured pine sap into the wound and then sutured it up. He says, I've done this before, and I found that, and as I've documented it, he said, the wound heals much faster when I put the pine sap in it and then suture it up. And it did. It healed up very fast. The place you have to be careful with in using pine sap on a wound is a puncture wound. If you have a puncture wound, let's say a nail, because pine sap heals so rapidly the tissue, you can then heal the tissue on top and have tunneling out in the bottom if you don't get rid of that pathogens down in there. So you got to make sure it's good and cleaned out if you're going to do pine sap on top on punctures. Carson, my youngest son. I was at work in a meeting. Mary Lou calls me, frantic, and she was getting ready to serve dinner to him. Now, y'all, I'm from Squatchy, and we kegel, and dinner's the noon meal. So she's getting ready to have dinner, and Carson had some chopsticks he's going to eat dinner with. And one of the chopsticks fell on the floor, so he leaned over to pick it up, and he had the other chopstick in his hand, fell off the stool, crammed it in his throat, came back up, crammed it in again, and he's got 2 holes in the back of his throat and bleeding. So she calls me. So I said, put ice on his throat, and I'll be home as quick as possible. So I got home, and I was just starting to flirt with this kind of stuff. I was still working in healthcare, And so we took him to the pediatrician. I was concerned because in the back of the throat, I didn't want to get near the spine and any infection. And so took him to the pediatrician, and she looks in, and she says, well, I can't suture that up. I can't suture that tissue up. All she did was bring in 2 other physicians, say, look at the back of this kid's throat, and gave him a prescription. So what I did is I used pine sap, and I don't remember why I didn't gag or something, but I just put pine sap all on the back of that area. And we had full closure in 2 days, 1 day, 2 days, and in 3 days you couldn't even see. I mean, just totally, and I know the mouth, all that area heals fast. But it's amazing what pine sap will do in healing. Mouth sores works really good. And I was it's been a number of years ago, and I was teaching a class just like this. And I'm talking about pine sap, and this little lady back in that back corner, where that fella is with the maroon shirt, and she raises her hand. She says, can I tell you something? Well, if you don't listen to older folks, you're not too bright, because they've got some information that might help you out. And she says, in 1918, when I was a little girl, and I'm thinking, 1918, wow. And so this has been about 20 years ago. And she says, when I was a little girl, she says, my daddy is a nurse down in Southern California, and my brother and I would go with him every day to work as he would treat patients with the Spanish flu. Does that get my attention? Going into the house of every, all day long with people with the Spanish flu, and he's taking his 2 kids? Absolutely. So she says, when we would get home, Daddy would take a pine knot, put it over a fire, and would heat it, and pine sap would drop out of the pine knot into a cup of water, and we drink it. And we never got sick with the Spanish flu. Well, my question was, how many drops, how much water? She goes, I don't know, I was a little kid. And then when I came back to East Tennessee and back to Newport, and I started helping, folks there, they don't come around no more. They're dead now. This is about 17 years ago. These older women would come by, and they would share with me the mountain stories. It might be from Cosby, from Grassy, from Dario. And they'd say, when we were little girls, and these are separate women, different times, just what they would come in, and what they want to share with me about, share to me about pine sap. It's interesting, the size, it was either that what they would use is either the size of a match head or a half of the size of a match head. They always use a match head as a description. And they said on the way to school every morning, they didn't have school buses back then, they'd walk to school, and their grandmother or their mother would give them just a little piece of pine sap to chew on to walk to school, and they didn't get sick. So there's something in the pine sap. Well, then I found out that Mexicans will make anybody here from Mexico or that area, and use pine needle tea? Pine needle tea, yeah. And so it's got those properties in it, healing properties in it. Activated charcoal, I'm sure all of us have used activated charcoal. It's excellent for food poisoning, indigestion, acid reflux, IBS, detox, foot baths. But be sure, do not use it within 2 hours either side of a script. I tell young folks, young girls when they come in, if you're on birth control, don't take it within 2 hours. It ain't going to work tonight. And so it doesn't matter if you're on Lanoxin for tachycardia, if you're on whatever, it's going to soak it up. One of my nurses called me one day, and she says, Walt, I read the MAR wrong, and I gave the patient way too much morphine PO. What do? I said, protocol, give them charcoal. No problem at all. It just soaked it right up. Charcoal works very good. That's why we use it in the emergency room and on the ambulances.
Have a bad strep throat, put some charcoal in a glass of water, stir it up, gargle it, and swallow it.
Yep.
It'll knock the sore throat out very soon.
And who do we think of using charcoal in the Bible? Who went and sat in ashes? What was his health problem? Yeah. So don't use it within 2 hours either side of a script. Charcoal poultices. Now, one day I was mowing the yard on Sunday, and I ran over my yellow jacket nest, and I had over 30 stings, and I was just a-shaking. And so I wasn't into this yet. Mary Lou was into this before I was. We didn't do this kind of stuff in regular health care. And so, but she started getting into it before I did. And so she went and just took charcoal and wet it and put it on each one of those 30-some stings. And I quit shaking, and I went to sleep. Then I woke up, started shaking again. And she's assessing, why is he shaking again? And she noticed that the difference was the charcoal was dry. So she rehydrated it, and I quit shaking again. You can do that quickly. A couple years ago, I was at the fire hall, and I'm still in the fire department. And so I was at the fire hall, and we got a call to help out EMS. They were at 0, and had a person that was stung by a bee, and they're allergic to bees. So I'm getting ready to go. Walter's going to his truck to get his med bag. It's a little bit better than the one we had on the truck. And I get a phone call from dispatch, and I answered it, and it was dispatch. And she says, Walt, where are you? I said, I'm at Station 2. And she said, it's so-and-so, and it was actually one of our firefighters. And she said, he's not good. You need to get there. So we ended up taking Walter's truck. It's a whole lot faster than fire truck. And got there, and his skin was just plum white like your skirt. I mean, plum white. And his blood pressure was, 70 over 48, I believe is what it was. Yeah, 70 over 48. Pulse was 118. He was in and out of alertness. And when he wake up, he is ready to fight you, kill you. He's an ex-Army guy. And then he passed out again. And he is very allergic to bees. And he got stung by 2 white-faced hornets, and one in the hand, one in the leg. So I said, Walter, get on the vitals, monitor vitals. And I asked the wife, I said, do you have any activated charcoal? She says, well, yeah, I bought some from you a couple years ago. So they went and got the charcoal. I poured some in my hand. Someone had a water bottle, poured some in there. Speaking of water. Poured some in there, just mashed it up together. We put it on his wrist, put it on in less than 2 minutes, or right at 2 minutes. As Walter's got the vitals, I'm monitoring, him, seeing how he's doing, making sure his airway's good, and his color started changing. He's alert. His alertness is coming back, and he's almost fully alert. Right at 2 minutes. Walter goes, Dad, his blood pressure's now 90-some over, I forgot what it was, but it started coming up. Pulse was coming down. Color was coming back. He's starting to ask me what's going on, and he didn't even notice I'd put the charcoal on because he was just monitoring vitals. And then he knew what had happened. By the time we got an ambulance there, he was fine, just like us. But I encouraged him to still go on in and get checked out. We don't know because, we're using charcoal. So he gets in the ambulance, and he's halfway to the hospital, and the paramedic, even though I told him what I'd done, the paramedic didn't want to get yelled at by the ED doc, and he starts cleaning this boy up, his hand and his leg. And he told me within 1 minute after that guy did that, his lips started tingling, and he said he passed out. It's amazing, isn't it? Amazing what God's given us. And so then we started using ground up flaxseed. Good morning, ma'am. Using ground up flaxseed, and that works really good. I went to Michigan and worked up there. There was a doc up there that he used it on breast cancer, lung cancer, worked very, very well, and learned what he was doing there, and he just put it in a chuck, like a incontinent pad, and it worked very well. And then I hired this feller out of Switzerland. He was out of Switzerland. And in Switzerland, the way they did it is they used psyllium powder. Psyllium powder. And so 1 part charcoal, 1 part psyllium powder mixed thoroughly, and that is a key, mixed thoroughly. And then between 5 to 6 parts, depending on the psyllium you use, 5 to 6 parts water. And then mix that really well, and you're going to think he's plumb crazy. There's too much water. And then about 40 seconds later, it turns into this black ball. Put it between 2 pieces of saran wrap, roll it up, roll it out. Had a lady come in yesterday, and she had this huge infected hand. And she'd been to the doc. She'd had taken antibiotics. It was still really bad. And through the other side, you could see it. And I said, ma'am, you need a charcoal poultice. And so I made her charcoal poultice, and it's amazing. It pulls that infection right out. If you do have an open wound, an example, you got a boil. Isn't that nice? I can say boil here, and y'all know what I'm talking about. Try saying that in Chicago, and they'll go, boil, what's a boil? And so when it's closed, you can use a charcoal poultice straight on it. But when it comes to a head, you've got to have some barrier there because you can tattoo. And you don't want to tattoo. Even though with the psyllium, you're less prone to tattooing, but you can just wet a piece of paper towel on it, put it on there, then put your poultice on there, and you won't have any problems there of the tattooing. But you don't want to put it straight onto an open wound. Well, I did that fella with his foot, but it was fine. Infected wounds, stings, bites, inflammation, gout. It works very good on gout. It really does. You can use gout in the water. You can put a charcoal poultice on it, but it works good for gout. Pain, cancer, we use it many times. Eye infections works good. Dental infections, I'm sure y'all have put a poultice up in here. And then the reason I like the one with where I make it with the psyllium is because you roll it out and you can cut you a little piece off the size of that little digit right there, kind of like silly putty, and stick it in there, and like you put a piece of backer in there, and you can hold it there against the gum, and it will pull that infection out. Then you can pull it out and throw it away and put another piece in, and it works really well there, and it's just real easy to use. Infections. And we read this last night. Antibiotic resistance is among CDC's top concerns. Upper respiratory infections account for 3/4 of all antibiotics prescribed by the office-based physicians. Antibiotics are often used inappropriately, and I'm reading straight from CDC in Atlanta, CDCP. More than 10 million courses of antibiotics are prescribed each year for viral conditions that do not benefit from antibiotics. And we talked about that last night, why that happens. And then this is from the Infectious Disease Society of America. The losing battle against deadly bacteria is a public health concern. Again, we're using big antibiotics when we don't need to do that. Or we're using antibiotics when we don't need to use antibiotics. Infections, what are things that work? Garlic, Allicin. Allicin's probably one of my favorite. Who's ever used Allicin? I use Allimed, works extremely well, but Allicin works very well. That's what we used last night. We talked about the gentleman that had the vancomycin-resistant MRSA. It was Allicin that we used. The fellow with the foot infection, with the osteomyelitis, it was Allicin that we used. Works very well. Golden Seal, we talked about Golden Seal last night, and so far this month, Golden Seal is excellent. Vitamin C. Olive leaf extract. If you've got an issue with shingles, this is amazing. 800 milligrams olive leaf extract 3 times a day. That's going to wipe out the shingles, kills them. And then usually stress exacerbates it, and take B-complex 100, one each meal. And then that helps with the stress. And then to help dry up the shingles and help with the pain, you can put like, who knows what, y'all know what a castor oil pack is. Take castor oil, you can take flannel, or you can take a feller's white t-shirt. Use white instead of the other color because you've got the dyes in it. But soak it in castor oil, warm water, and apply it to the affected area. It works a little bit better if it stays warm. You can put a heating pad or a hot water bottle. Put it to the affected area. And a lot of folks will leave it for 12 hours and change it every 12 hours. I like doing 11 hours, taking it off, letting it air dry for a while, for about an hour, and then you put it back on and so in the morning put it on, in the evening take it off, let it air dry for about an hour, and then put it back on for another 12. Works extremely well for shingles. But the olive leaf, colloidal silver, nutrition, managing stress, hydrotherapy, charcoal poultice. Allicin, a little bit on Allicin from National Institute of Health. Allicin is an active ingredient of garlic that has antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral, and antiprotozoal activity. Allicin exhibits various biological properties like antimicrobial, anti-cancer, antioxidant, immunomodulatory, anti-inflammatory, hypoglycemic, and cardiovascular effects. Allicin is phenomenal, y'all. And we look in the old country when people would eat garlic. They didn't get the plagues many times. It's huge. Allicin, we use it for MRSA, as we talked, the vancomycin-resistant, H. pylori, C. diff, E. coli, common colds, IBS, dysentery, salmonella, diverticulitis, psoriasis, pseudomonas, cholesterol. It'll lower cholesterol. It's powerful. Immune system. When we look at the immune system, And that's a huge issue today. Would you agree? Our immune system. We're seeing the people going paranoid again, worrying about, we've now got a Delta strand. Do we have to shut America back down? The key is the immune system. The key is the immune system that God gave us. You can do all these things to build your immune system. The Allicin, the elderberry, the vitamin C, the vitamin D, the magnesium, the whatever, golden seal, echinacea. But these first 3 items, and I have seen it over the year and a half, over and over and over again. People come in and get these items, spend a lot of money, but if they don't manage their stress, if they eat sugar, and if they have sleep deprivation, it totally wipes out everything they're doing. As we talked, maybe you didn't mention that last night. I share so much. Maybe I did last night. Sugar. 1 12-ounce soft drink will wipe out your immune system 50%, up to 50% for 12 hours. Read Natalie's book, Proof Positive. You'll see that in there. Can you imagine? Just 1 Sprite, 1 Dr. Pepper. Now, I went to First Church when I was a kid down in, y'all remember First Church when we used to own Tunnel Boulevard Church? And we could drink Dr. Peppers. That wasn't no problem. Now, we couldn't have Coca-Colas, but we have Dr. Peppers. Y'all remember them days? My granddaddy had it just perfect. He could put them, he'd buy them by the case. Remember those wooden cases? And they had them little, he went down to Chattanooga and buy them Coca-Colas, Dr. Peppers, and he'd put it in the freezer, and he'd freeze it, and he had it just right to when you pop that top off, that foam came up to about, that ice came up to about just like that, just perfect, didn't break the bottle. But it wasn't Coca-Cola. Well, that 12-ounce soft drink will wipe out your immune system, the sugar, up to 50% for 4 hours. Add you a Snickers bar, we said last night, one about that big. Not the ones today, but the one that big when we were kids. And now only 1 out of 14 white cells are going to do the job. You just anesthetized 13 of those white cells according to the research that Neil Nedley did. But then let's say you've got you a milkshake or a piece of cheesecake. We were talking this morning to my aunt about cheesecake. And just 1 slice of cheesecake, 1 average size milkshake will wipe out your immune system 92 to 93%. It's the sugar. But then, okay, well, what about orange juice? Peanut butter? Good question. Really good question about peanut butter. So I do this with the kids in the school system. As I have the kids line up, and then I have them stand out here, and then I said, okay, line up by how tall you are. And then they'll line up by height. And I'll say, okay, Johnny and Sam are the same height, so we'll put an and between them. And then Sam and Susie's shorter, so we'll put a comma between them. So if they're the same height, we put an and. If they're different heights, then we put a comma. Well, that's what it is in your ingredients. And so the first ingredient on your ingredients on your label is the first item in there. But what if there's an ingredient says this and this? What does that mean? Same amount. So get you a Jif peanut butter. What's it say? First ingredients, peanuts. Second ingredient, sugar. But there's a what between? And. So you could legally call it sugar butter. So good question. What about peanut butter? Now, you could get one, say Smucker's, that just says peanut butter or peanuts, comma, less than 1% salt. Then that's a whole different ballgame. So you're exactly right. What about peanut butter? What kind of peanut butter are you using? Is it as much sugar as there is peanuts in it? So I hope I'm okay, y'all. I'm just talking my talk. Sometimes I really work hard when I go places that people can understand. Can y'all understand me? Okay, good, great. I'm just being me, y'all. They have a hard time when I go other places, so I have to be real careful. So sugar's really big. Then sleep deprivation. Let's go to stress first. Again, that same book, Proof Positive, Neil Nedley. He says that just 1 minute of anger will lower your immune system significantly for 6 hours. So I was doing a program with Arvo Khanna. Y'all know Arvo? He's a neurologist. Anybody know Arvo? We were doing a talk a few months ago on immune system. And I asked Arvo, we were talking about it, and I said, Arvo, look at this. Is there any difference neurologically in the brain between really getting angry or really being stressed and the effects on the immune system? He goes, it's the same thing. So, okay, good. So whether you're 1 minute or just 1 minute of anger or 1 minute of major stress, is it the same thing, Arvo? Yes, it's the same thing. Okay, good. So 1 minute of stress or anger will wipe out your immune system significantly, according to Neil Nedley, for 6 hours. Now, that person pulls in front of you. That person calls up and blasts you out, at work, or whatever it might be. 1 minute of significant stress, 1 minute of anger will wipe out your immune system for up to, how long? 6 hours. Well, Harvard, just year before last or last year, came out and said sleep deprivation wipes out your immune system as much as stress does. Both more than sugar. So you want to be careful. Sugar, stress, sleep. Check your vitamin D levels. Vitamin D is huge for your immune system. It is not how much, see, I told you I have a hard time with this, and I just like sharing so much. It is not how much vitamin D you take. It is what is the blood level. I had a lady come in. She's taking 5,000 IUs of vitamin D a day. Her blood level is 12. Is that good? No. Lab says 30 to 100, though 30 is way low. Arvo, the neurologist, says to his patients, because he mostly works with brain issues and with his patients, he wants his patients to be over 60 to have good brain function. Arvo says you got to have at least 60. Well, so 30 to 59 is not good. And then there's some physicians like Ted Watkins, he's a surgeon outside of D.C., he wants his patients at least 80, if not 90, for their immune system. So this lady, she's got a vitamin D level of 12. She's taken 5,000 IUs. I got a buddy of mine. I saw him just yesterday. He's a physician. He says, all you ever need is just 5,000 IUs a day, and that's all you need. Well, this lady's got a 12. That's not enough. Plus, this lady is Caucasian. What's that mean? When I went to Africa last time, I took this physician with me. He's from South Georgia. He helped start the medical school in Tallahassee and taught there for a number of years. As we were talking to these physicians and nutritionists in Africa, he says, y'all, he says, we have like sunglasses on our skin. It takes 6 times more sunshine to get the vitamin D for us than it does for Walt. So the darker the skin, the longer it takes. Well, this lady's Caucasian. Plus, she works outside. She works in landscaping. So it's not she doesn't have sun issues. She's outside all day long, all year long. She's taken 5,000 IUs, and she only got a 12. So I said, let's go BID. Let's go twice a day. It only went to 17, and we went for 3 months at twice a day, and it went to only 17. So I said, okay, let's do what Watkins does up in D.C. Let's go 20,000 IUs twice a day. Let's see where we go. Went 3 months. It went to 24. It's not how much you take. It's what's in the blood. And so I called Watkins, and I said, what do you think it is? He goes, I don't know. He says, I haven't seen that before. And Watkins studies B a lot with his patients. And a few days later, I see that a study came out and said magnesium is significantly important for the absorption of vitamin D. Watkins calls me that same day. He said, did you see the study just came out? I said, yes, I saw it this morning. So that's what we did. We encouraged her to take magnesium. But be careful about magnesium because, see, most of your magnesium is from blood serum. And we've now found that blood serum is not as accurate as RBC because it's only 1.5 to 2% of your magnesium is in the blood serum, and your body just puts more magnesium in the blood serum than the RBC, according to the guys at the lab that I've talked to. And so really an RBC is a better source. So just because your lab says you got adequate magnesium, maybe not. You ask for an RBC, red blood cell magnesium, and that may be a little more accurate. So I encouraged the lady to do magnesium, and boom, it went to what? 97. So as we look at vitamin D, it's not how much you take a day, but do your blood test, just like I did the other day. I got my blood tested to see where I was. Good nutrition, exercise, universal precautions, absolutely. Wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. I mean, that's so important. Oil of oregano. Oil of oregano is like a 44 Magnum to me. I mean, it is amazing. If I feel like I'm starting to get something here, in the incipient stage, and that is the key, in the incipient stage, you want to take, I take 10 drops. Now, this is not 100%. It's 100% oil of oregano, 25% of it, 75% olive oil. Do not try putting a mess of oil, 100% oil of oregano in your mouth. It'll give you a problem. So I do a 25% oil of oregano, which is 100%. Then I do 75% of olive oil, and then I'll do 10 drops of that under my tongue. Don't do that. You're going to think I tried to kill you. When you go to swallow it, it's pretty stout. So put it in water to start with, or start with 3 and build up. Yes, sir?
I put about 3 or 4 drops in a little bit of water,
Mm-hmm.
drink it, and I'll gasp and get the hiccups, but I don't get cold.
Yeah, it works. It's tremendous. But you got to catch it in the incipient stage. I've got it in the car. I've got it in the truck. I've got it. Mary Lou's got one on her side. I got one on my side of the bed. We got it at work. I even have it in my turnouts, in my fire coat, because if I'm out on a wreck on the interstate at night, all hours of the night, or if I'm fighting a fire at night, and it's wintertime, or when I carry it all year round, because sleep deprivation is really prone for me to get sick. So I can be on the scene and pull it out, take me some oil of oregano when I start feeling something, and it builds it up. If I feel it again in 2 hours, I'll do it again, but normally that's it, done, gone. But normally all I have to do when I start feeling something, take 10 drops, and it's gone. It's amazing how good it is to boost the immune system. But again, it has to be in the incipient stage. Garlic, Allicin, Podiarco. Podiarco is one of my favorites. It's phenomenal. Podiarco, guys, it works great for prostate. Excellent for prostate. It's like Pac-Man. It loves cancer, and it just eats cancer. It's a blood purifier. If you got thrush, it's great for thrush. I really like Podiarco. Red clover, echinacea, golden seal, elderberry, vitamin C, and, well, I won't go to that. Olive leaf extract. Boils, use a blood purifying tea. Chaparral. Chaparral's probably my favorite, but it's nasty. Who's ever drank chaparral tea? Yes. Is it nasty? Yes. It comes out of the high deserts of Arizona, California, but it is a phenomenal blood purifier. Burdock grows in this neck of the woods. Red clover, charcoal poultice, Allicin, nutrition, water. Skin issues are normally blood issues. Boils are a blood issue. Clean that blood up, and where I live, we used to have a lot of boils, and I'd have people use chaparral, burdock, whatever. Clean the blood, and we don't see it as much as we were. It comes through the skin. We see the boils, and when you use the chaparral, it cleans it. If you have a boil that's not coming to a head fast enough, you put some tea tree oil on it, and it'll come to a head a lot faster, and you get over the pain. And the poultice works really good. Insomnia, this is probably the biggest area that Mary Lou and I work on now. When we first went to Newport, I would say female hormones were the biggest, and then stress. Now it's insomnia. Insomnia is huge. And the thing about it is what works for you may not work for me. You may take Benadryl and it puts you to sleep. I take Benadryl and it doesn't put me to sleep if you did a medication. So even on the pharmaceutical side, you still don't have the same response between two different individuals. On the herb side, the phytochemicals are the same way. So what may work for one person may not work for another person. And it's also sometimes like deodorant. You know some people who use deodorant and 3 months later they got to change deodorant because it quits working? Well, some people just can't use the same deodorant all the time. They have to constantly change deodorant. Well, the same thing's true here. Sometimes something works and helps you fall asleep, and sometimes it doesn't. So valerian, hops, skullcaps, passion flower, that's a really good combination there. Magnesium, say maybe 800 milligrams. There's bowel tolerance at night. I like one called Calm and Relax by Thompson's. It's got some chamomile in there. It's got some passion flower in there. Works very well. I use a magnesium oil. They make a magnesium oil. It's like a deodorant roller ball, and I just rub it on the bottom of my feet, and puts me to sleep. Works well. Transdermally goes right through the feet. That's why you change socks, because your feet really absorb real well. Chamomile. This is interesting. Did you know that a light supper can mess with your sleep? It sure can. Because what happens is as you eat your flaxseed in the morning, it has tryptophan. And then as you go outside and the ultraviolet rays goes through the eyes, it stimulates the pineal gland to convert the tryptophan into serotonin. And that helps us throughout the day. And then at night, if we don't eat a big supper, and if we go to bed on time, the pineal gland converts the serotonin into melatonin. But if you eat a big old supper, you just don't produce, you just don't convert as much serotonin into melatonin. Or if you stay up late, you don't convert as much serotonin into melatonin. So you need those two things. But for insomnia, getting to bed on time and eating, better not to eat no supper, but that was good English, wasn't it? It's better not to eat any supper, or definitely eat light. Tryptophan works for some people, B complex, calming folks down, sunshine, L-theanine, which is an amino acid, works good for some people. Right after, yes? Exercise, yes. You know, a rebounder is excellent. If you can do a little rebounding, just a little health bounce, just maybe 2 minutes before going to bed, really can calm you down. But exercise, and you don't want to do real aggressive exercise before going to bed, but exercise does help with sleep. You're exactly right, yeah. Right after 9/11, our patients out of New York City and D.C., I was director of a clinic outside of D.C., and we'd have a lot of patients in from New York and D.C., and they couldn't sleep. So I called Dr. Walter Strachan. Anybody remember Dr. Walter Strachan from Loma Linda? He was a psychiatrist. And I called Strachan and I said, what do I need to do? He says, this will work. He said, 2 tablespoons of valerian powder, 2 tablespoons of hops powder, 2 tablespoons of skullcap powder, and 2 cups of water. Works every time. We did it. It didn't work. So I called Strachan the next morning and I said, Strachan, it didn't work. He goes, wow. He goes, okay, do it. You did it at 8 o'clock. Yes. Okay, do it a full dose at 6, a full dose at 8. Still didn't work. He said, keep backing it up. It took a 2 o'clock, a 4 o'clock, a 6 o'clock, and an 8 o'clock full dose to finally knock them people out. And it took about 6 months. And he says, those people are really, really fractured. And very rare, only one time have I had to do that. It was a lady, she'd gone to a hospital in Winston-Salem. They'd done elective surgery on her. She was in her 30s, I think. Yeah, in her 30s. Things went wrong in anesthesia, and she had some significant brain issues, and that's what we had to do for her. But usually just once. That works very, very well. Or there's a company called Nature's Answer. It makes a extract that has the valerian, hops, skullcap, and passion flower. The other thing about insomnia or sleep, falling asleep, and this is a huge issue. Harvard's talking more and more about it right now. And with COVID, do you know what they found the problem with COVID and sleeping, according to Harvard? The bedroom became the office. It became the entertainment room. It became the dining room. It became everything. And what happens is the brain's associating it as the library and whatever. And Harvard said the bedroom should be used for 2 things, and 2 things alone: sleep and relations between the spouse. That's it. If you're going in there and eating, if you're going in there watching TV, if you're working, whatever, the brain just gets... So if you go in there for the purpose of what the bedroom is for, the brain then thinks that way. And so take the food out to the dining room. If you're going to watch TV, go to the living room. And that's important. The other is you want a room that is cool, not hot. You want a room that's not messy. And so there's a number of things that can help. You want it quiet. You want it dark. Those can help with Yeah, take out the blue light. Absolutely. Yes, exactly. Yeah, blue light's a big issue. Okay, stress. Big issue here. Stress is a huge item. Rest, nutrition, water, exercise, trusting God. B complex, I was at Florida Hospital back in 1978, and old doc told me, he says, Walt, if you want to help patients with stress, B complex is the best thing I found, is at Florida North when they just opened Florida North. And it does work very, very well. B complex 100, one each meal works very, very well for stress. Another one works good is lithium orotate. Lithium orotate is another one works very well, O-R-O-T-A-T-E. It's lithium, it's an element in the ground, like magnesium or zinc. But read Natalie's book on depression, The Way Out, and it'll talk about lithium orotate. Flaxseed, because flaxseed has tryptophan. Kava, I like kava because it doesn't make you sleep, and I believe people need to work. And so chamomile, hop, skullcap, valerian, those guys can make you sleepy in the daytime. Kava doesn't, so that can help. Trace minerals are good. Magnesium is very, very good for stress. Classical music. Bleeding, direct pressure, cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper is excellent to put on bleeding if you have any major bleeding. Keep going here. So many to share. Yarrow, red raspberry, shepherd's purse. Oh, this bleeding fibroids. Ladies' mantle, crane's bill. I was at church one day, and I get this phone call from one of my firefighters, and one of the females. And so after church, I called her, and I said, what's going on? And she says, Walt, and she didn't sound good. She says, I feel like the lady with an issue of blood. And she said that she had had constant bleeding for 30 days, and she just had no energy. She felt really, really down. And I said, well, I'm about to leave church. I go to church in Granville. And I said, you meet me at the office, and I'll give you something. So she met me in Newport, and I gave her the shepherd's purse. And she called me the next day, and she said bleeding totally has stopped. But so if you have issues of bleeding that won't stop, that works extremely well. Ladies' mantle, crane's bill, or some others that are used. Nosebleeds, raise the arm above the head, cayenne dissolved in hot water. You can actually spritz that up in the nose. Extract of witch hazel. Another one they taught us in EMS is crunch some ice, put it up under the lip, and that'll make that cold. Ice on the back of the neck. Okay, good. See, we all learn. We keep learning. So ice on the back of the neck, ice here, witch hazel, cayenne pepper. You can spray up in the nose, snort some. Bleeding ulcers. Cayenne is excellent for bleeding ulcers. Stomach ulcers, ulcerative colitis. You can take 3 caps, PRN, and it will help stop that bleeding. Burns, we won't get into all this issue, just what do you do for burns? You want to cool it. Remember, burns keep burning. I remember our textbook said that burnings keep burning for 12 hours. So that's why when you go to the beach and then about midnight, 11 o'clock, midnight, you're really cooking. Well, it's because it just keeps on burning. So you want to cool that down and stop it from burning. I had this, I was in the office one day, and this guy comes in. He was Filipino, and he was a maintenance guy, and he was working on a furnace. And so it was propane driven. He went in, he turned the valve off. He went into the mechanical room where the furnace was, turned the light on, and the light didn't work. So he just goes over to the furnace, and he gets down to look at it, pulls out his big lighter, and goes, and it exploded because there was a leaky valve. And it burnt everything up. It burned his eyebrows, eyelashes, burned his hair off. He was burnt from here up. And then he looked like a 1956, 57 Chevy with flame marks on him. And he was in a lot of pain. So the first thing we did was we poured aloe vera. And his face totally soaked up a quart of aloe vera juice. And it was aloe vera gel in it. And it totally soaked it up. And then my grandma up on Kegel, she taught me to use potato poultice. And so I had the gals up in the dietary department to grade me a bunch of potatoes. And so we put potatoes on it, and then we poured aloe vera juice on it. And then we go back and forth. And when it get hot, we take it off, and we put more on. And we ran out of aloe vera. And we had a bunch of aloe vera plants that had been gifted to us down in the greenhouse. And we had therapists that were out of Venezuela and Colombia, and so I had them go down because they knew how to make aloe vera. And so they came up and made aloe vera gel out of it. And we just kept treating him back and forth for 5 hours. Then we showed his wife what to do, and the gentleman had 0 scarring. And our physician, who is a surgeon, he said, if I had treating him in the ED with what's available to me there, he said he would have been scarred with the amount of wounds he had there. Boy, time's run away, y'all. It's 1:45. So let's see here. What are some things to do? We'll finish up here with burns. Lavender essential oil is extremely good. Yes? Honey is. Honey's great for it. Absolutely. Honey's tremendous. Pardon? Yes, you're exactly right. Thank you. You've got your lavender essential oil, works very well. Aloe vera, burdock, comfrey, colloidal silver, calendula, highfalutin folks say calendula, chickweed, bee propolis, golden seal, and that's marshmallow root, not the marshmallows you buy in the grocery store, marshmallow root. Well, y'all, we're out of time. There's a lot more of these on here. Just a lot to share. Yes? Don't use it. Everybody's different.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It actually makes it worse.
Yes. Yeah, it's like I got on the plane 2 weeks ago, or less than 2 weeks ago, flying out of somewhere. Oh, I was in Twin Cities. Now, that's an interesting city to be at right now. And so as we were sitting in the airport, they said, do not carry on any peanuts because we have a passenger that's allergic to peanuts. Don't even have it in your pocket. And so you might be allergic to peanuts. Someone else might be allergic to cashews. Someone might be allergic to brown rice. And so it's true. There's times people just have allergies to some items, and for you it'd be colloidal. So if you ever get burned and go to the hospital and they want to use Silvadene on you, let them know you might be allergic to that because there's colloidal silver in that. Yeah. All right, y'all. We're I guess Sabbath school's over. Anyone coming up, or you want me to have closing prayer? Okay. Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, there's so much to share. We thank you for these natural remedies that you've given us. And help us to stop. We're so busy and we just want the easiest thing, the fastest thing. But you've given us some just natural stuff that are very, very effective. And Lord, give us the desire to learn. Give us the knowledge to learn. And Lord, we ask that you bless as we apply. We ask this in Jesus' name.